philosophy, no good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Advanced philosophy memes. We are good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Shoutouts to Andreas, Deacon, my boy Scott, Pedro, and everyone else that engages on my posts. It's Sarah. Keep it up, man. You'll get there someday. And everyone else from Great Memes.
I just want to apologize to everyone before I say this, but I love acts of God. Don't you just love it when nature is the antagonist?
Oh, don't do that.
Let me just say, like, I'm sorry to all my friends in Florida, like Paranoid American, everything like that. But holy cow, if it's not like Christmas making me sleep like a baby and just watch these people like who are all curious come up to the water and be thrown down by a giant storm wave that just they don't expect. Look at this kid right here. Whoosh, just washed away. I don't know. This is crazy that people don't listen to the news. What do you think? What do you think about that? I don't know. Kind of cool though, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so people actually like commit kind of semi. What's the word? What's the appropriate word?
seppuku. It's
Unaliving.
an honorable, dignified. Yeah.
Going down with their ship.
Halfway unaliving. It's like you're just like tempting fate. You're like, well, I might die right here if I do this, but it's kind of fun, you know. It's not
so,
like.
Isn't it the opposite? Isn't it the like, wow, I'm not really alive, and I won't feel alive unless I live a little bit. So they're like willing to die for a little bit of livelihood.
Yeah,
you know, because the other thing is people that have never lived before. They're just like buying plastic wrap to put their car inside of in their apartment building with their air conditioning that they've lived all their lives, and they're scared of the collapse of that stability. Whereas somebody else is saying, let's just do it. Let's just like go out and get as much life as possible today as possible, even though I might die.
If you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much room.
Yo, Andreas, what's on PBS?
Have like a very, very powerful.
That was my concern. I'm turning it off. I was watching about the Gilded Age earlier. I was learning about the Gilded Age. I was really excited to learn about Carnegie in ways I hadn't quite learned before.
All right. So living on the edge.
Forgiven.
If you're not living on the edge, then you're taking up space. Who said that? Andrew? That's a good one. I love that quote.
On the edge.
I have to say that next time because I get told that I'm kind of an edgy character. So now I feel like there's a place for me in the world. That's nice. But I don't know. The weather thing isn't so. It isn't so like. I feel like you could survive a 15-foot tidal wave that wipes out your entire suburban neighborhood, right? Like you just have to not be. You just have to not be living in the suburban neighborhood anymore. You have to have like boats on your roof ready to go. You went and bought your inflatable. Like there's just so many ways that I could imagine doing that where you're going to survive. And the only way you're not going to survive is if you are.
Well, think of
jet ski. What's that?
Like,
yeah, you're thinking about the jet ski. See, like you're thinking about it. You know exactly. There's ways to do it, and there's everyone else who's like, I'm gonna sit in my chair like in Titanic and wait for the water to fill my house. Is very different than I'm gonna put boats on my roof. You know what I mean?
If you had like a 360-degree canoe, you would get tossed around, but you'd probably like live, right? Like if you're just sealed in like a floating coffin, you know. That'd be the coolest way to survive a hurricane, I think. Just stay in there.
So
Well-
I want to
well,
find the Soviet USSR. Go ahead. You go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say there's also all right, it's not a new meme. I mean, now I guess it's becoming like within like the realm of people's frontal lobes, like the whole idea of energy-based weapons platforms that could mess around with something in the atmosphere that could control the weather and whatnot.
Dude, the Russians in the 70s would make these things out of like Air Force rubber material that look like the donut chip from Mr. Garrison in South Park, basically. But
Yeah.
it's so good. These things are the way to go because
Nice.
you got like wood. Look at this wooden sticks in between there, and then they go through the most hardcore rapids, and they do not die. I'll tell you what. Like Russian people live pretty hard, but they were doing some pretty crazy stuff here, and they would just bounce off the rocks and everything. Look at that guy, totally alive still, crazy. So I'm just saying, like, if the Russians could make it, I think the Floridians could too. That's all I'm saying there.
Yeah.
See that?
So, yeah,
Florida's something.
Sorry, what were you saying about Florida?
I was just kind of going off on a thought. No, it was going somewhere, I think. But you can go ahead if you have something more concrete.
No, I mean, what's this I hear about like people that could barely read at a third grade level thinking they're controlling the weather? They're controlling the weather. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's like, I think it's kind of a low blow, but I do think there's something to that conspiracy theory, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Conspiracy theory is a weird word for it. So, I mean, on my channel, if you haven't already seen it, I've got and you can find this on Periscope as well. I didn't make this or something with AI. This is an old video from the 50s. It was a classified film made by Walt Disney for the U.S. government. It finally got found and declassified. It was declassified, but no one ever saw it. Then 20 years later, people found a copy of it, right? And it's called The Eyes in Outer Space, a science factual presentation. And of course, you can tell from where I'm going that this was made for the Department of Defense, for the Army, with appreciation for the Air Force, for the Army Signal Research and Development Laboratory. And it's talking about Ward Kimball, of course, Disney's Ward Kimball. And they talk about what we can do with all of this amazing technology that we've had for the last 20 years that we've been experimenting on. Well, now we've got all these problems, right? Like weather. Here's footage of the coast of Florida. And couldn't we do something about that weather? We could easily imagine, man coming up with solutions to so many things. What if we were to control weather the way we've learned to control nature in other ways? And so they talk about, well, we could introduce maybe millions or billions of tiny little pieces of copper. That way electrons would flow between the copper. We could create sort of a ionic belt, right?
Huh, that's interesting.
And so this is the Copper Ionic Belt Space program called the give me just a second. It's called like to think about this. It's the Ford Allen project or something. Give me 1 second. I wrote it down earlier actually. The Westford project.
All right, what are oh, sorry, continue.
So the Westford project was to take, like I said, all these pins and to launch them into space, okay? Here is a stamp next to some of the actual pins that were launched into space. Trillions, hundreds of trillions of pins were launched into space. Project Needles is another name for this, right? And it was just before we had satellites so that they could make a energy belt out of these pins around the world. And this could be used 3/4 of an inch long, 400 million copper dipoles, 2,000 mile altitude, a ring around the Earth of copper. This was the original weather control plan, and they did this really early on. Wait, did you have a question though you wanted to say before I went on further?
No, keep going.
Okay, so there's that, and then there was the 1930s weather patents for control of weather. 1948, United States patent to process controlling of weather by Harvey M. Brandow, talking out of Delaware. Says dissipating clouds and fog by clearing the atmosphere of moisture particles that are large enough to be visible and yet not large enough to fall out of suspension of the gas's atmosphere. So using lenses to focus light from the sun into clouds to evaporate clouds in certain areas. It was super effective. They were able to move clouds. And then there's also a story, which I just found this out from Adam Krigler, who you guys saw for a second last week, which was Storm Pivot, Bermuda, September 11th, 2001, which maybe you already know about this, but I did not somehow catch up with her. I think it's Hurricane Gabrielle. Is that the one? There's several of them. But there was a storm that was coming straight towards the coast of the United States on September 11th, and then it just pivoted, right? It pivoted out of the way. It just turned 180 degrees on September 11th. Right.
Well, they needed clear skies before that operation.
Jesus.
Sounds like a good joke. It sounds like a good joke, but would it be funnier if it wasn't true? That's the thing. It seems like there might be some truth to that. Another thing about that is Bermuda was the other place that planes were diverted for September 11th. They were diverted to Canada and to Bermuda.
That's interesting that you said that, because before I was gonna say, like, what would be the most nefarious fucking reason you could think of for controlling the weather or whatever, like if you were these entities. And I would think like, oh well, if you needed like a bunch of, say, bodies to disappear and be used for who knows what, you just generate like an earthquake or two, or maybe like a gigantic storm where hundreds of people go missing, a lot of kids and stuff.
That's the one. So that was the wrong storm I showed you. It was Hurricane Humberto. That was I wanted to get that correct. And Humberto, a way weirder name, but yeah. Sorry.
But yeah, that's like one of the things that what's one of the bad reasons that I could think of to like, you just give a reason to make people disappear and then they get shipped off to the UFOs or whatever.
Yeah, I think nefarious is only one of the answers though. Like, so the thing about that Disney video is it's showing that, let's say that the storm is headed for, God forbid, New Orleans, and we want to save, in this timeline, New Orleans. What do we do to save New Orleans? Well, we blow up a rocket off to sea. It causes condensation. It draws the storm because of heat and cool that way, right? And we can start doing that in when? 1948, maybe 1938, the way the Germans were thinking. So there's no reason it had to be completely nefarious. They're thinking and explaining it even to the military, like, oh yeah, we would want to have some control over our environment to save our cities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how does Harp fit into this? Because I know that Harp's set up on the Ring of Fire essentially, but all of these hurricanes happen on the East Coast. So is there a way for them to manipulate weather patterns that are happening over on the East Coast with Harp?
Yeah. So I wanted to explain this better than I did last time because I tried to, and I don't think I did a very good job. But you have to understand that there's a ELF band and a VLF band, right? And there's a nuclear VLF band. So what's happened is we've launched enough nuclear radiation up into the sky that VLF band is bouncing. I want a picture of it to explain how shortwave works. But you can maybe kind of imagine it like, hold on, let me just look at like shortwave radio. Shortwave?
Waves.
A short wave? Yeah, okay. So imagine a wave and it's hitting particles, right? So as it hits the particles, because of the lightness of the particles, it doesn't fall fast enough and the wave pushes it up. So you actually get these nuclear radiated particles launched up higher into the VLF band. And so you have a nuclear belt in the Van Allen belt, right? And so that's something that affects weather because it radiates particles and makes them move faster. It makes it way easier to transmit both radio, but therefore data, and also to break up clouds. The other thing is it makes it possible to control where clouds are forming way faster. And this is, again, connected to that Project Westford because they're able to control, literally, even without the radiated particles, they have these pins, right? And so it creates that ionic belt that's able to push where radio is bouncing. And they have shortwave all over the world at this point. So it's not even nearly as important as it used to be because you can use cellular towers to transmit shortwave that will bounce all over the world. And then this is going to continue to push up into the Van Allen belt. But Harp is used. There's also the Russian one. What's the name of the Russian Harp again?
Isn't another use for that system to also be able to like spot UFO or make UFOs
The
visible
woodpecker.
that are normally invisible?
So the Duga radar also is the woodpecker, and there's this is in the Ukraine, in Chernobyl actually, and it's similar to Harp. It does exactly the same thing. It can do exactly the same thing as Harp, actually with somewhat, some people thought, more effectivity in the 70s and 80s. And so the United States Harp has been retrofit to have a lot of the same qualities as the original woodpecker. But yeah, there's mind control aspects to that too, right? Like that we have frequencies that even are interacting with each other, that we resonate with each other. And one of the major experiments that they ran with the woodpecker was the bring cake experiments, which I might have told you about, where they said, bring cake, bring cake, bring cake, like with this machine. And people, not just at the base, were like bringing cake to work. Their wives were making cake. They were like, there are people for miles in every direction. We're like, I don't know. I just felt like my wife told me I had to give my boss a gift today. She made a cake to give to my boss, you know, and like all these, and people were just, it was completely crazy. And they started realizing though that this only worked super well for people who understood the symbolism. So the next thing is, how do you figure out the universal symbolic language? And there might not really be one. It might be easier just to laugh track train babies, so that you start to learn all the Gestalt symbology and reactions of people for colors and shapes, and use that more of a primitive architecture. So it's really interesting that after Harp and Woodpecker emerges, the government gets so invested in NPR, right, and in public educational television,
because that sets the foundation for the paradigm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then today we don't even need laugh tracks on our shows because of that.
And also they have like our phones, which are constantly sending and receiving data, like in a very personal way, not just like in what we're inputting it, but, you know, allegedly can pick up what we're thinking.
I mean, how do we know that our collective here isn't just brought together through some like formally established paradigm that dictated this, you know? I
mean, resonance patterns are real, and I think that's something. Yesterday, Christopher Knowles from The Secret Sun brought this up, but I think it's really important that crystals and crystal radio sets, we didn't go that deep into this idea, but demons attaching to drugs, right, is something a lot of like people, it's scary to him, it's scary to me. Yeah, but these drugs that are crystals are crystal radio sets that are helping spirits connect to your blood, right? Because your blood then has that same frequency. And the more you take that drug, the more you train yourself to be easier possessed by that spirit.
That's crazy, man. That's like, I've never heard you say some shit like that before. That's a good one. I like that one. Well, fuck it, if you do these drugs,
out when I say that,
it puts crystals into your blood, which makes it act as an antenna for extra interdimensional forces to come and like take over and influence your body down to like the visceral level. That's fucking terrifying, man. That's horror movie shit.
Makes you not want drugs, doesn't it?
Well, but the different drugs have different properties. You know, they attract different kinds of entities. You know, so you have like crystal meth on one side and DMT on the other. And,
some could say speaking like certain, I would, you know, like speaking certain languages. I think Hideo Kojima had a play on that, where speaking certain languages can like literally wire your brain in specific ways. Like apparently when you learn Japanese, that really maps your neurons out in a distinguishable way compared to like, I don't know, like a Romance language speaker.
Well, Dr. Amon Hillman's pushing really hard Greek, and I don't know if he's just trying to flatter me, but like he's like, yeah, man, just when you think in Greek, it makes your brain just bigger, you know. And it's like that might be, but maybe it's true. I don't know, Kurt. What were you saying?
Wait, we should all make your wiener bigger.
Dev, I don't know. I don't know that one. I think Swahili. But
Greek does not make your wiener bigger. I'll reiterate that point.
We should listen to Andrew. Andrew has more morals on the subject. No, I had another thought. So we were talking about what did we talk about before languages? Just before languages. Sorry, the
mind control, weather control.
Oh, okay, like with people on meth, like if you don't think people like meth addicts like have been possessed, is like, have you seen a meth addict? Like, have you not like just like visually witnessed what happens to a person? It's literally like, you know, they're halfway dead. It's like all the life was just like sucked out of the body. Like,
honestly,
out of the bones. I don't know. It seems like
I've seen alcohol do that. I've seen fucking Xanax do that. I've seen a combination of the two do that. I've seen Percocets definitely do that. I think like every area, it really depends on your geography, like what area you're in. That's really going to determine all the drug taking trends. I mean, I guess I've had my fun, you know, like I've done a little mix of it. Certain things I've definitely avoided. I've always avoided heroin. I never liked pharmaceuticals. I never liked Xanax. I never liked painkillers. I never liked that stuff. I'm not like an all natural type of guy, I guess. It's just I never craved anything off the shelf, you know. I was always just smoking weed, drinking beers with my buds, and maybe once in a while do some other stuff, but nothing.
Well, you know, like Trappist monks were cool with ferments. Like the Bible talks about ferments. I think that there's a place for natural ferments. There's a lot of scare though about your system being a frequency based being. So
Yeah.
if you get something that's really like tied to you, I think that crystal radio set thing is more than a metaphor, because you really are setting a frequency tone that is something that's a cycle. And so it's something that can really be there when you're there, especially a spirit, some kind of an entity like that that's able to be there when you're back there. If you're constantly orbiting, because you know everything's everywhere all at once, but you're flickering, right? So if something's on the same flicker path as you, you can't ignore them. I think that's a big part of it. You get seen, right? And that's what people say with magic. They're like, oh wow, I went to this place, and all of a sudden other things at that place saw me. They're like, what are you doing here? You know, drugs are like that, and we're told that they're so safe and it's so chill, and it really only happened after the anti-God atheist movement, because before that drugs were such a mystery school rite of passage thing, and then they're like intelligentsia into medicine, and then from that they're like, well really this is separate. Like recreational drugs, that never existed before. It used to be soul uplifting drugs or healing your spirit in a sense. It wasn't just recreational. Even wine had some sort of like mystical quality of storing the livelihood of the years, you know.
Yeah, but I would say like define recreational. Like to me, like recreational use of like marijuana or alcohol could be like, you know, drinking and smoking and going to the studio with your buds and playing some music, or maybe like you get high and like you just like draw for like hours. You know, I think if you compare it with creativity, it's like it could be better. It could be a little bit more productive. I'm
that
not
might
saying
be
like
a whole other place to go with this, though. That's interesting, because so like you think about incel behavior today, and how a lot of them would be just priests who were acclaimed scientists 100 or 200 years ago. If you were to, you know, but today everything is so recreational. There's no point to anything, so there's a lot more sheer meaninglessness to people's lives. If you go to make, if you go to make music, you could have been making music that exact same moment with your friends. You could have had fun doing it, but it would have been about God because you were a monk, or it would have been about, you know, something. The age of Aquarius in the 60s even. There used to be more meaning to things, and now we're just saying, oh yeah, I just want to go make music with my friends. I don't even think that's how it was with swing musicians or like jazz bands in Louisiana in the 19th century. Like there was so much more meaning to music. It wasn't just recreation. Like the idea of recreation's even changed, you know, to be meaningless.
I mean, I think like one of the highest arts, especially back then, was like theater performance, you know, like because like when you, and I think that was like an appropriate time for those people, like ancient people, to just get really fucked up, you know, because it's like we're trying to enter another world here. A piece of us has to break down. And I think that's why a lot of times like both the performers and the audience were like probably prone to getting pretty drunk before going on their monologues and such and acting out their scenes or whatever.
Yeah, it seems like we go through phases for sure. Like, but most people weren't drinking super strong, like high. What do you call it? Spirits. Of alcohol. Yeah, spirits was not a very common thing. More of it was the, you know, again, wine and beer, which are ferments, which are lower alcohol content. They weren't like gins and things. That was only common medicinally. Like, and they could make gin. They could make vodka. They used vodka if someone had stomach parasites. They would clean out your stomach parasites with vodka in like a singular event. But it wasn't something that people would do commonly, right? And it wasn't until the prohibition of alcohol that we invented cocktails as a way to sell spirits, which were condensed alcohols, so you could have as much alcohol in as small of a space as possible to sell as, you know, discreetly as possible. But when you got it to a place, it was too strong, so you mix it with juice and mineral water to extend it, right? That's the only reason we have cocktails. Otherwise, it would have just continued to be a extreme medicine versus ferments. I think ferments are different. Like, you can get completely thrashed on beer and all that, but have you seen the way Danish kids just drink beer? Like, they're not nearly as messed up as like a Texas parking lot outside of a 7-Eleven with high schoolers here.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, drinking though. Let's see. As far as its demonic properties, I've definitely witnessed that firsthand a bunch of times, especially among like musicians. I feel
Yeah.
like something about musicians are very prone to like really heavy substance
Possession.
abuse. Yeah, possession, pretty much. Because I could imagine it now, like for the divine spirit, the divine creative spirit to come and take over and like so you could channel that and create like beautiful things. For that to happen, like a piece of you kind of has to step out of the way. And there's people who could do that naturally, God bless them. And then there's some people like who think they could only do that through the use of like a substance like alcohol or weed. And that's a scary place to be. It's like if you feel like what you love can only be enabled by getting like fucked up, like that's really dangerous, you know.
It's also weird to want demons to wear you as a glove, but I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well,
And-
you got to consider. I think origin of these extracts, essentially, or distillations, is pretty important. You know, like, where are these grains being harvested from? What's the history of the area and all of that stuff? Not to mention, you know, the stills and the people who are actually doing the process are sort of imbuing it with their energy and intention as well. So who's to say that the reason that the demons are able to channel themselves through the substance is not by like design in a certain way?
Well, I like the idea of these substances turning you into like kind of an antenna. Because I mean, in a more literal aspect, you could say like, okay, so something like alcohol, what does that do? Really lowers your frequency. And when you're at a lower frequency, that's when you really do become vulnerable to negative impulses, negative influences, just negative experiences in general. Because like when you're in that low frequency state, like when you're in a state of lack, which that's what booze will do. Booze will literally make you dwell on your shit. It doesn't really make things go away. If anything, it just slows things down, like keeps you so locked and wallowing in it, as opposed to just being like higher frequency and just vibing out of it and vibing into something else and vibing out of that. Like that's really what it's supposed to be. You know, like when you do sustain like higher energy, and you know you're not really getting like hung up over like singular events in your life, that really is what's supposed to happen. But things like alcohol can slow that down. And when you are at a lower frequency constantly, that's when the demons creep in. It's like, hey, you know what you should do? You should get into stealing, or like you should get into like lying to people who care about you. I don't know, like just whatever, like really bad pattern, which, you know, could be like a form of possession, you know?
That totally makes sense, especially since alcohol specifically deactivates the higher functioning parts of our brain and sort of like brings us back to that reptilian central older part of the brain and kind of makes you function there.
You know what I do think though? I'll give some credit to it. I think there is it's not all negative. Like I think the intention is pure enough. I think really like subconsciously people get fucked up off of alcohol and drugs really as a way to honestly try to like get closer to God in a way. Like they're trying to break down their ego in the most obvious way possible. And they're trying to
Bill Wilson, right? No, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, what were you saying? What were you saying?
Well, because like double AA, the AA group, Bill Wilson, his whole thing, he was like a correspondent with Carl Jung. Carl Jung was writing back and forth with him. The higher power, even the idea in AA of there being a higher power, is coming really from Jung's, and maybe from like Roland Hazard's like understanding of archetypical self philosophy and connection with God. But he was pushing for LSD. Like he really wanted LSD to be the 13th step. And I feel like it's really kind of weird and fascinating how they created the divorce of Bill Wilson's ideas, because they really don't. They pretend like they believe and understand what he was talking about, but the fact that it's just a Ophiokic cycle of the 12 steps instead of that being like the first. It should be like 5 minutes of the 12 steps.
Yeah.
So that then they have like a bulletin board of all the things you're going to do for the week, like boat races in the park and like mini golf, right? Because the 13th step, that was the really important one. Like you got to do all this work so that you can do the LSD ritual for Carl Jung, and then you can go off and never worry about it again. But they don't let him do that, right? Because they think that's kind of. I mean, I'm not saying you should even.
Yeah.
I'm just
Honestly,
saying that's what AA was about originally.
well, that's
right?
how I feel
Have
about
you-
drugs in general. It's like you shouldn't really feel like you have to do this shit. I mean, either way, like if you ever feel like
Yeah.
you absolutely, I'd like to think, if there was like a apocalyptic scenario, like I could go a day trying to survive without fucking like a drink or a fucking smoke or something, like because there's bigger things that.
That's the point though. Like, so AA is for people that are possessed. They're addicted to alcoholism. They're both
Yeah.
physically addicted beyond the mental addiction. So they get shakes and everything. I mean, the descriptions of possession and the description of coming off of alcoholism are kind of similar. Like, oh,
Hells
his
yeah.
skin was rotting and he was sweating and he was like bile was coming out of him, right? Like, and he was like evil and angry and delirious and couldn't speak right. So like there is a thing about possession. And they're like, well, what do we do at that point? Well, Jesuits might have given you an acacia ritual with Chichonia bark, right? Which is what they made
Yeah.
the gin and tonic. The tonic comes from the Chichonia bark. So there's probably a lot of examples of people doing this ibogaine, ayahuasca, get off of these other drugs thing because
Yeah.
you were in a war and you've been on opiates. Who knows, like what circumstances?
Yo,
But LSD might have been like it seems like it was the 1930s equivalent.
LSD. Yo, do you know what AA will tell you? It's actually really interesting because I do the podcast regularly with my friend Bren, and he was like in and out of AA. I think he still is, but he was telling me that there they teach you that there's like 3 types of addiction. There's 3 dimensions to it. There's the physical addiction, the mental addiction, and the spiritual malady. And it like the troubles happen when it's like you can't just like treat everyone as if their alcoholism is like the same type of that. Because, for example, like you might not have a physical addiction, but you could just be thinking about it all the fucking day. It's like, or,
Right.
and the worst is when it's like a combination of the 2 or 3 even. And that's like a really, really bad situation.
Yeah.
It's interesting,
Spiritual's
like
the worst.
a lot of the AA stuff reminds me of like Gnosticism, or it seems to draw from like a lot of like Gnostic tradition and practices, which I find like fascinating.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't want to give it too much criticism because it really does come from interesting traditions. The problem is that they're serving coffee and cigarettes, and they've kind of abandoned, I think, the initial plan. Sort of like Al-Anon is too. They've abandoned the initial point of what it's supposed to be, which is
He called it a cult. He was like, yeah, it's kind of culty. But you know what? I think about this, like martial arts schools are kind of culty too. And then I think about like, well, our, nationalism is culty. Like,
I have no problem with cults.
Culty.
I think what's up with the why are we so against this idea, this word cult? I mean, I grew up. My first introduction to the word cult was cult classics because I was in a video store and there was a sign that said cult classics. So for me, my favorite movies were cult movies.
Yeah.
And then from there, I get into the idea of like, oh, wait, movies about cults are really cool. So I don't know. Why do people hate cults? What's the deal? Like, I mean, isn't a cult basically just like a group of people that have a philosophy? Isn't like similar like the heresy? We used to hate the word heresy when we were Catholic. Now we hate the word cult when we're secular. But heresy just means the right to choose and to have a school of thought of your own. So what's a cult, right?
It's because some cults are more culty than other cults. Like I guess, and they do way more dangerously culty things, I guess, than like some more benign cults.
Well, so they cultivate, right? So cultivate, culture, worship, homage. It means to a particular form of worship. Worship means worthy gift, right? So it's it's cultivation, a labor, right? A labor that people do, a colony. All of these words are kind of connected. I think that we're afraid of these things because they fly in the face of federalist, fascistic homogeneity.
I also have a take. Like I think well, I'm actually just ripping straight off of Whitehead because his whole thing with like philosophy of organism is that these structures like of society and culture, like you got to start treating them as actual living things, like things that are alive, things that have agendas and things that have like thoughts. And yeah, so I guess like one reason why people could be viscerally afraid of cults is because like on one level we don't consider them like living things, but on a deeper subconscious level it's like, yeah, those things are alive, like numbers are alive, symbols are alive, like
yeah, Neoplatonic ideas are probably alive or more alive than we'll ever be. Yeah.
So I think
I
that's
agree
why
with that.
I think that's why cults could be scary. You know, the idea that these things could have like a will of their own, and we're basically just shadows of those things, if anything. Like, holy shit, like they're like gods, if like to us.
Kurt, what's more real,
Cults are
you or
just
your
a way
ideas?
to.
Oh no, I want to hear what you said first. Go ahead, Andrew.
Go ahead, Kurt.
God
Cult-
is more real. I
Yeah,
don't know.
there we go.
Yeah, everything is just so transient. Everything is just so transient that I don't know. I'm leaning towards ideas. The only thing that is real is that singular reality to which you can't really separate yourself from. But in that regard, the only thing that exists essentially is spirituality. So it's like if you cobble ideas up into that blanket of spirituality, then sure, maybe that's the only thing that really truly exists. But yeah, that's just the main thing. And it's like, well, everything. It's not that you shouldn't interact with reality. I think that's part of your purpose is to interact with it to a certain point. But at the end of the day, it's just like it's it's a wash. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's just like you're here. You can interact with those good things, and well, you can interact with bad things too, but hopefully not in a bad way or in a way that's just like um, sends you into that negative spirit realm. But yeah, so it's not just. I think that's one. I was raised on really hard like Protestant Christianity, and I love the ideas, but I think there's a lot of misinterpretations that the church like gravitated towards over the past centuries, but ever since Christianity was a thing, because you don't have to interpret life as like, oh, you do all these things, then at the end of your life, it's just judgment day. It's like, well, no, you're constantly defining your path as you go. It's not just like your world gets flipped upside down the moment you die. It's like there's supposed to be a degree you can kind of see what's coming. Not perfectly. It's not perfect, but I think that's where philosophically they got away from even just like biblical teaching, because it was easier to condense, but if it's easier to condense, sometimes that doesn't show the totality of something. And so that's the weakness with organized religion. Even if you have a Bible and the Bible is beautiful and has some amazing information, it's like people really don't know what the heck they're doing with it.
And yet
Yeah,
somehow I
that's,
just know that if Kurt in his crusades had been conscripted as a Janissary or a Templar soldier, he would have been a great Roman centurion. You would have been a great Roman centurion, all right?
I appreciate that.
You Buddhist pacifist. I don't know what happened to you. Sorry, Andrew. This is your chance. Get in here.
Oh, I was just saying that's kind of the thing about religion and culture and cults themselves. It's a form of beliefs that influence a group to behave in one particular way or another, right? So I guess the reason why people would have a distaste for cults or kind of like, get the ick from the word cult is because like, oh, these people they behave differently based on these other behavior. It's just otherism. It's a way to like other a group of people. But I think that what really gets lost in translation, which Kurt was saying, is that over time people, they do the behavior, they say they have the belief, but no one really understands the reason or the meaning behind it. There's that story about the women in a family who have a tradition of cutting the ends off of like their roast that they make. It's like, oh, well, my mother cut the ends off her roast, and my mother cut the ends off her roast, and then someone eventually asks the person who started, and it's like, you guys haven't bought in a bigger pan yet?
Yeah.
So,
Gotta cut
That's
the ends
real,
off.
dude. My mom still does like cooking a turkey in a paper bag. I'm like, but Mom, it's got like ink on it. Like, what are you doing?
It's tradition. Do you remember traditions are solutions to problems we forgot?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, so I wanted to post this up. Don't adapt the energy in the room, influence the energy in the room. But then Tasey said, pretty good. Tasey said, depends on the situation. If you're getting up on stage with a dynamic band and you've never played with a before with the energy. Oh, hold on, let me try that again. With a band you've never played with before and the energy dynamic counts to fully sound as a unit, you're going to want to adapt the energy in the room. If a bunch of people are being babies, not serving a purpose and making a bad energy in the room, don't adapt but influence the energy in the room. All right, so there's like a difference. Sometimes if it's like too loud and everyone's trying to make their own band, you can't really influence the energy of the room.
Okay, so I got a good metaphor for that. It's the difference between being a thermostat and a thermometer. A thermometer only reacts to the amount of heat, whereas the thermostat sets the temperature.
Yeah, I think that's actually pretty accurate.
Yeah,
What do you
I
think,
liked it.
though? I mean, because I think that's what a cult is in a lot of ways. Because you've also got like Gnostics who exist within, like heretics, which exist within other religions, and they're just influencing from the inside out. So you can be part of the bigger tent and influence, but it almost, what do you think's better? I mean, doesn't it kind of make sense to just become an autonomous group that sustains the traditions that it wants to sustain? Because everything else is up to question and will probably be gone in a generation if you don't.
I mean, be like water, right? Isn't that the whole thing? Water takes water takes the form of whatever vessel it's in, but H2O can express itself in different states of matter, and in all those states of matter, it can definitely influences the area around it, which loops back to the weather thing that we opened with. But yeah, and who's to say that if you're if in that moment you're choosing to be the influence in the room, that it's not because of some puppeteer pulling your strings and telling you that you should, or whatever's in your glass telling you that you should be the one to influence the room. Who's then being the water in your vessel?
I think everyone's got like, every single person has their own energy field, which is pretty much dictated by, I know I use this word and it sounds like vague, but I swear there's a point to it, which is frequency, right? Frequency of your thoughts and your feelings and your actions. And it's true that you need more, you need to be able to sustain more energy, like at least physically and then mentally and spiritually, to be able to like sustain higher frequencies, to be able to go from event to event to event to event, like to be able to process event after event. So basically, you could just do more shit. I mean, that's like a crude way to put it, within like your time frame. But if you do increase that, then I do think people like give off kind of like this field, right? This energy field, something you really can't perceive. It's not, I don't think it's something that's like based on matter. I think it's just kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's a psychic thing. Like maybe it really is a psychic perceptional thing. Maybe it's a vibe thing. Maybe it's just reading quote unquote energies. But yeah, that's how I see it. Like, where if a person's really like, I guess, sustained, like self-sustained, self-aligned, where their thoughts, feelings, and actions aren't really like in conflict with each other, I guess. Like, I'm not even saying like the smartest person or the strongest person or the most righteous, but the most like, I guess, like interaligned or whatever.
Yeah, because like you actually have a practice. I think maybe instead of us talking, you should talk a bit about like, because you just said earlier, isn't doing the martial arts thing almost like a cult in and of itself? Like, what is it about that practice though? Because it's not a cult to me. It's a cultivation of a certain kind of person, like you're talking about. There's a thing you're doing with your day. It's like if you were a seed and you were growing under a rave light with Coca-Cola versus under sunlight with water. Like, there's going to be different things that happen to that seed trying to grow, right? You're growing with water and sunlight. That wasn't clear.
I mean, I don't know. Like, ever since I was a kid, I've been growing up on, because like I grew up in New York City, and it's like it's a pretty toxic city, you know?
Oh, good dynamic there. Yeah, good point.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean,
you didn't have to turn out like this.
I guess not. I mean, I think martial arts is great because it's very cerebral, but I think what's really important is the physical aspect. And if it's like meaningful physical activity, you even see it in like pro athletes. Like they get all spiritual about it too. Like where they'll be like, first and foremost, I want to thank God. Through God, all things are possible. And as a kid growing up, I would listen to that stuff. I'd be like, that's just cheesy, whatever. But then like I think about it now, and I'm like, holy shit! Like they mean it. They
totally. That's the thing. You look at their eyes. They mean it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the one thing they get. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think when you do like go through a physical discipline like martial arts or like a sport or something, or bodybuilding even, like if you like actually like commit to it for real, like you do it as if practice is the goal, then I think like naturally you're going to sustain more energy. You're going to be able to like get through shit. Like less things are going to get to you. Like less people are going to get to you. Like you're going to have less insecurities. And then eventually you're going to have more cognitive space to wonder like, why? Like, what's the meaning of all this? What am I doing here? And that's when you go through like some really dark aspects. Like, why am I even like trying to get fit? Like, why am I doing any of this? And then that's when you're in for a real trip, you know, like the supposed dark night of the soul. But then you get out of that, you know, barring like on assuming that you don't have way too much stuff that you just can't get over. If you can get through it, then well, apparently like that's when you find what you're looking for and you see the way or whatever. And that to me is like, you know, kind of like the baseline for alignment. And I don't know how that experience would be for different people. Honestly, I really don't. I just know how it was like kind of for me. And that's like, I guess just speaking from like phenomenological experience or whatever.
Like school then is a cult, right? You take a bunch of people that are all different kinds of people. You make them all
Yeah,
get up
yeah.
at the same time, go do the same things. They live by a bell. You know, I think that is cultivating. And granted, there's a big difference between everybody that goes out of school. There's also a really interesting common language which emerges, common ways of looking at things, a new idiom that forms. It's hilarious. Like parents will always laugh at like, oh, what are these kids' new words and what are they thinking about right now? I mean, that's like the definition of a cult, right? They have their own language, their own ideas that are insular to their generation.
Yo, I swear to God, CrossFit looks like a cult. Like every time I pass by one of their gyms, they look like jacked to the tits on like high energy, like highfalutin shit. Like they're just like fucking flipping tires all day. And I'm like, damn, they have a culture for sure.
CrossFit's
There's yeah. God, so much culture comes from the West Coast. There is a lot of power and strength and a sort of magical quality to doing things as a group with a shared belief. You know, it's kind of like how like a chorus functions. You know, all of these voices coming together. Some, you know, you got people singing the main melody. You have some people doing harmonies. You have people playing within their own register, but all lifting each other's voices. And ideally, you're doing it in a cathedral or some sort of like actual physical structure that is designed to make it so that all of these voices and all of the frequencies and the waves are, you know, lining up and hitting each other, and the sum is greater than the parts. And again, I'm just speaking like literally, but also metaphorically, like when you have people functioning in this way with a shared intention, all sort of like playing their part, maybe even perhaps doing this culty thing in a geometrically designed apparatus that can channel their energy in a certain way. There is a lot of power to that.
That's what the Chinese call it. The Chinese say companies are just business cults. And
Right.
I don't disagree.
Well, also triad, right? Like even the idea of a triad, right? There's an elemental force there. And corporation, what's a corporation? It's a super person, right? It's a kind of person made of persons. I think that's the value too, because you can create these heresies, which are schools of thought that can interact with each other, and you can manifest the height. I mean, because if before AI and before technology that was beyond this, you have people reading from books and creating a synthesis of intelligence, which represents that school of thought. And it takes a lot of time. It takes maybe more than a lifetime. It might take many lifetimes, generations, to get to a point where that school of thought is worthy of debate with another school of thought. I think these are valuable ways of doing it too, because we can't always be sure the hypothesis until we're able to test it, right?
So you need like, instead of think tanks, you need thought dojos. You know?
Thought dojo. You better hurry. You better go out and copyright that before
Nah,
it's too late, bro. I don't know.
That's what cafes used to be. Cafes and bars used to be that very thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
coffee shops in Vienna, right? Like it was the mode. Instead of going to universities, everybody was intellectually hanging out in a coffee shop, which again gets us back to drugs. Shame on coffee shops. I don't know. What do you think about this? This is maybe like a hard segue. We could keep talking about that, but I just saw this. Scientists accidentally discovered the first species that fused together if injured. A team of researchers have discovered a fascinating new attribute of a specific species of jellyfish that enables two of these creatures to fuse into one.
Nice.
So we
I mean,
already
that
know about
makes sense.
dinosaurs, right? Yeah, this is the next thing.
Isn't that what the spirit is trying to do through regular reproduction, to sort of like heal generational wounds? Like
Yeah.
these people are doing it in their lifetime. It's not people, but you know what I'm saying.
I mean, maybe we gotta, because like, you know, that's the thing about these siphonosphoric jellyfish. They're super people. They're like a corporation. If a McDonald's is a person, if Starbucks is a person, then I feel like a jellyfish is a person.
Yo,
You know?
McDonald's AI would be sick. I would try to like be best friends with it. But
You
it
know,
would just
McDonald's AI Labs is a really real thing, right?
it would be
About
like,
that.
I will turn you into a burger now. And I'd be like, no.
So McDonald's bought this AI Labs and created this AI Labs thing, but now they have partnered with IBM, I think it is, or no, they ended their partnership with IBM and they have their very own AI Labs. That's like right? Where is it?
Oh shit.
McDonald's AI Labs. Where is it at? Maybe they're done with it? I don't know. No, there must be confusion here because like they have like AI run automated McDonald's. Like we've seen them in like Texas. It doesn't make sense.
In a dystopian setting, there's just like the only like the McDonald's AI is a major character.
Okay, yeah, they're looking for other partners for their AI chatbot based ordering. Okay, yeah, they're no longer working with IBM because they've got their own thing. Exactly. That's why they make it look like they're not doing it. That's the weirdest. They're just really trying. McDonald's is becoming one of the most powerful AI companies in the world. Like they bought.
Well, they were the most powerful real estate company in the world. Why not the
Yeah.
most powerful AI company in the world?
Yeah,
Like
you know,
they're like
so
as powerful as BlackRock.
they're really empowered. They're really amazing. And so, you know what operating system that they've been using since the 70s? They don't use Windows. They don't use Mac. They don't use Amiga. They don't even technically use Unix. Like, it's a kind of Unix. They use SCO, Santa Cruz Operations.
Nice. That's a
Yeah.
badass name.
It's hold on. SCO is the military and Navy operating system for boats. Basically, you'll see like some of the major tankers in the world, they use SCO. It's a crazy important operating system, but it's only used for multi-million-dollar boats and for McDonald's. That's kind of the deal with it.
Santa Cruz, like Saint Cross. Who is the cross? Is that Jesus? Like, was Jesus a saint?
So Santa Cruz is really like also because it's an earthquake zone, right? So it's Sacred Crossing is what the natives
Okay.
used to call it. The natives called it Sacred Crossing, and then it kind of the Spanish were like, oh, it's called Sacred Crossing here, and then that became Holy Cross because that was the most Catholic way to say it. They wanted to call it Branciforte. They were like, we're not going to call it Santa Cruz. We're going to name it after this guy. We're going to call it Branciforte. But then there was this major earthquake, and they're like, what was with that earthquake? They're like, well, that's why we call this place, you know, the Sacred Crossing, because it's constantly having like these, you know, crazy, the land's pulled apart and everything. Like, okay, all right, we'll keep calling it the Holy Cross, the Holy Crossing Point. But SEO, it's like they still have to port back software to run. Like, let's say a boat's got an operating system that's made in the 80s. That boat is still being used. It would cost so much to put in new computers. So they just continually, and it's such a powerful computer, it's just really big. So they're still updating it to have modern software so it's not easily hacked by some other military power. So you have to continually keep SEO working all the time. And the major, you know, other people using it is McDonald's. And then McDonald's now has this OpenAI lab that they purchased like 5 years ago. And sure, it looked like they were partnering with IBM for a while, but in the long run, like, you don't need IBM, you know, because you can do everything on your own. And what McDonald's will get to is a point where they can produce the same thing that PepsiCo is doing. They figure out where things in the world are for commodities, reserve trading. They buy those things at the cheapest price possible for 4-year long-term leases or 20-year leases if possible. And then they completely decimate the price of that product over the next generation in that place by finding other places that they can compete to bring the price down on. Which is like, this is all slave state Banana Republic stuff. It's nothing new that they're doing that. But then they figure out how to resell that to you because they can study you. And then they're like, okay, at a limited time only, in your town, we'll have this bacon rib thing. And in that town, we'll have the salad bar thing. And it's just amazing how they're able to figure out how to get all the money out of you so we're moving away from an industrial economy into a service economy, and so the least amount of entropy for the most amount of service is how McDonald's might become. In the future, there's not going to be a bunch of competitive stores. Like, there's going to be one thing that's going to be, and you're not going to know it's just one thing. It's going to be like Cisco, right? But it's going to be, that's McDonald's is competing to be the one store, the one shop. Like every gas station would have a McDonald's, right?
Well, it gets international inputs on human behavior and consumption, like fucking 24 hours a day. Like, are you telling me that McDonald's has developed the most efficient resource management system, but they're like using this power for like some sick, twisted like profit game? Like, it could be. Man, that's beautiful.
Same with Amazon. Same with
McDonald's
Coca-Cola.
did also help solve a lot of national hunger crises at some points, different points, because they're fucking McDonald's.
During the quarantine, they were an essential workers, essential food. Trump was making sure that people could get access to McDonald's or they could work at McDonald's. Yeah, it was like a Marxist ration card that would get you to McDonald's.
It's a solid product. I mean, let's be real. Like, you could have like whatever, like high standards for burgers or whatever, but regardless, McDonald's could kind of do the trick. Like, honestly,
European McDonald's is
European McDonald's is healthy because by law it has to be, and so that's the other thing.
What about Asian McDonald's? Their shit is off the chain. Like,
I mean,
they got some crazy stuff out there, man.
Yeah, there's some crazy chemicals in their food for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, the additives, like that's what makes it. That's what makes it so damn good. Like, did you know that the smell you get when you open up a McDonald's bag is scientifically engineered to make you want to go and get more McDonald's? Like, they even got the damn smell like just ironed out like just perfectly, so that
Kurt, save us. What are you thinking? Come on, I know that this is traumatizing you.
What, McDillhole?
Does McDonald's not make you feel like you're looking at a homicide? Like, when I think about McDonald's, I think about like dead people on the floor in like a humid apartment building that's just been sitting there for 3 days. Not just me. Just me.
It's I worked there. It wasn't a pleasant experience. You know what I learned? I learned last week that it costs a franchisee, if you want to like start a McDonald's and make your McMoney, it costs like $1.2 million to start it up. You would think that's the price of being a tool, but no, if you own a McDonald's,
you got to sell a lot of cocaine before you can own a franchise.
Exactly. But no, it sounds so ridiculous. Part of it is ridiculous, but we have this culture of like, I worked at McDonald's and I worked at Domino's. I worked at both of those chains, and you would think,
His name is Robert Paulson.
Being a store owner, it would come with a lot of quote unquote responsibility. But when I worked at McDonald's, I never met the store owner. Oftentimes, what our system is geared to do is people will buy these stores and buy these franchises and set their people up, and you might not ever hear from them ever again. It's like a shadow mafia almost. When I worked at Domino's, it was slightly different. Like, the owner wasn't there. He has a store in Pennsylvania and he lives in St. Louis, which I think that's just sinful. I'm tired of society like covering up like that.
St. Louis is evil. It's true. You should never live in St. Louis.
The whole city of St. Louis is evil.
What do you mean by that? What's wrong with him living in St. Louis? And I'm kidding, of course. What's wrong with him living in St. Louis and then having a store in another state?
If you run a business, you should like actually run the business. I don't know, like, what, there's like a gap in people's brains that
I've got that gap. I've got like fluid right there. I can feel it. But what is the he owns a business in America. He doesn't run it. He owns it, right? He owns it. Tell me, why is that so evil? Explain it.
It's
or wrong. He doesn't even be evil. Just why is that? What is the logical fallacy of owning a business you don't run? Explain that to me.
Why it's like, why is raping somebody wrong?
What?
Okay.
How
well,
do I have
that's
to answer that
Whoa,
question?
whoa.
that's a really
whoa,
different.
hey,
To me, a
yo.
little different.
There is
Hold on,
no
hold on.
rule.
I
That's
think
not
I have-
offensive. That's not
I have a
offensive.
better analogy. It's like fathering children you don't raise.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're a billionaire, you know, you have some kids,
Maybe.
hire someone to raise them.
But he's
Right.
paying. No, but he is raising it because he's paying them. You own the business. You're paying for the thing. You're paying the taxes. You're dealing with this whole thing.
Yeah,
It's just that
no,
they're running the
no,
business.
But having
No,
a
you're not.
connection to your business, like a presence there, is important. I think is what.
So
You're
like,
saying,
let's say,
right,
okay,
Kurt?
so like in California, you got like a Pizza My Heart in Santa Cruz, right? And then they have a Pizza My Heart in San Jose. They can't be at both locations at the same time, but people want Pizza My Heart in Santa Cruz and in San Jose. So what do? Do we defy the laws of space-time, or do we own two
Right.
businesses and have our
Nope.
friends run one of them?
That's a lot closer than St. Louis in central Pennsylvania. Okay.
But what about Los Angeles, which is 600, was it 300 miles away? Los Angeles now wants it. San Francisco wants it. It's an hour and a half north. What do we do?
Yeah.
What do we do?
Well, like that's within like reasonable distance. That's like I have no problem like with the idea of chain stores in general. Like I guess if I have a big problem with the owner, I do have a big problem with our
It's the
system.
owner.
Like,
Yeah.
well, people no. Domino's is a publicly traded company, and so it's not just the owner that's getting a lot of free money for doing nothing. It's also shareholders, and so like I think in a totally just system, it would be a requirement for workers to get a certain percentage of shares. That would be a very just society, and I don't like, but it's not the world we live in.
Yeah, thank God
currently.
life isn't fair. You know, that'd
Yeah,
be crazy.
thank
Well,
God life isn't fair. But
because
that's
like, well, how would that affect reality though? Like, if you think about it for a second, like, why would I give a damn to own a business if I have to give it to you? And what's the value in incentivizing you to work that much harder? If you work, are you going to work that much harder because you own that part of the business? Are you going to sustain that part of the business if you own more of it? Like,
Why wouldn't you?
because
Wait,
I
yeah.
don't know, Zimbabwe. I don't know. Like what? I'm just saying. Like, I'm just thinking about every example, not just the idea of it. You know,
Yeah,
I'm thinking about
I think-
reality.
Isn't Buc-ee's ran that way? If I'm not mistaken, don't people who work at Buc-ee's have like
How's
a?
Bucky's doing? Is Bucky's doing good? Which
I know that
I
there's
like their
some
logo.
like. I know there's some like iconic like gas station that is run as a co-op. I'm not. It may or may not be Buc-ee's. It may be some other one.
If Bucky's is a
Yeah.
co-op, that would be really.
Here, you
interesting.
always trigger hardcore capitalists in the comments section. It's really funny.
Isn't it great? Isn't it great?
It's the best. It's pure dopamine. No,
Yeah.
that's not the only reason. I don't purposely try to trigger people. I'm saying, like, we live in a society. Like someone said, well, what about the idea of consent? The idea of consent is diluted. So it's like, what if you can half rape somebody? Well, that does exist. You know, that does actually.
Why is this the metaphor? Can you zigzag me here? Like,
I'm
explain-
sorry. I'm sorry. YouTube is totally wussified.
Yeah, next time
sorry.
use like a R word, but not hard R. I don't know. Just try.
Nah,
to,
that's fine. I give you a pass for you. Speak your soul. Speak your truth, man.
yeah.
Please, like I wasn't
Here,
trying to be offensive, and I know
No,
we
I
live in
believe
No,
you.
no,
hyper-
just-
No, you may. I think it could be apropos. You know, like taken in a certain context for sure. You know, it's like
It's like the Zizek. It's like the Zizek joke where like the Lord rapes your peasant wife, and he says, "Peasant husband, hold my testicles so that they don't get dusty in the mud." Right?
Yeah.
And then the wife is like, "You just stood there and held his testicles." And he laughs. He's like, "Yeah, but I'm a dirty peasant. My hands were covered in mud. His testicles are filthy now." Right? That's kind of the.
Yeah, there is a portion of the system that's involuntary, and like when you build up a society where lying to people is the standard, some people will inevitably believe the lies and then get shortchanged in those lies. One of the lies is that your currency means something. That's that whole lie depends on a lot of people believing it, and so. Like I do try to encourage people, like think about what your life would look like without money, because you are an animal. That's a scientific fact. You are an animal. You know, you need air, water, food, shelter, maybe some love thrown in there. That's what you need for your survival. So what would your life look like without it? If you think that life, your entire survival just comes from money, you are buying into the lie, and you are manipulated by, you know, this like actually spiritual force. It's one of those things that's just inarguable, you know, but like
well, that's like
people try
saying
to
like,
pretend like it is arguable.
well, that's like
Um,
breaking it down intellectually to saying, I mean, when it comes to like stuff you learn, it's like there's really nothing worth reading then other than the sacred texts. It's like,
no, I'm saying I'm
like
springboarding. Sorry.
I'm just saying to like make to make your ideal society, you'd have to destroy everything first, so that we would have to like start over and not give a shit about like, I don't know what, like material possessions, like stuff, like I don't know, I guess like lavish homes, you know, cars. Do we deny all that to kind of eliminate the need for money? Because I'm telling you right now, if we just relied on the barter system, that would be kind of tough to like sustain. Like, let's say you're a dentist, right? Or you needed a dentist and you were a peanut farmer. Like, what are you going to go to a dentist? It's like, all right, how many peanuts is it worth it? Like, do I have to give you for you to like do some dental work on
Yeah,
me? Like, you know,
and
like do I have to give you like 1 million peanuts or something? Like,
I hate also the
We
idea
better
that
tell this to the ant colony.
before you springboard though, because I want you to. I'm just saying I hate that it's being taught as a hypothetical, because what Chris is saying is like literally happening right now. Capitalism is collapsing. America is not going to have a new razor go dull every 6 months. We're not going to have annual releases of products. They're not going to be making yearly cars pretty soon. This is the end, right? This is the end of that kind of consumer reality. And look how happy we all are, right? But like, there's a problem with
we're
it
so
too,
happy.
right? You know,
We're happy as a society. Yeah, well, I was going to say, like, now that we've sufficiently dove in, if that's a word, gotten into the lie of currency, that's when currency starts to be manipulated. And so now most countries of the world, they have fiat currency. And what happened in 2020, they just made, if it wasn't obvious, they made it completely obvious that your money's fake. They can just print twice as much of it, devalue it, and then you as a consumer, middle class or lower American, you are screwed. Like, that is what factually happened. That's how the blame isn't just on Democrats or Republicans. It's the fact that your money is inherently worthless. And like, honestly, having a metal system is better. It's not perfect, but at least it can't be so obviously manipulated. And so that's why there is an inherent lie anytime you sign up for employment, because you're not getting anything. You're getting something imaginary that other people can manipulate. People that have nothing to do with you, people that you don't vote for. It's just like, I can be energetic about this, but people you don't vote for control your money. And so that's why there's something involuntary about our system of exchange. And that's the conclusion.
All right, now that metaphor comes back to a plausible place. Yeah.
But I think at this point with fiat currency, the value is mutual agreement. You know, it's
dead,
like
honestly,
Pokemon
at
cards.
It's voodoo.
Yeah, that too.
It's voodoo.
it's dead.
voodoo.
Without
You
debt,
believe
there's
it?
no fiat.
But
Well, I mean,
belief is valuable, though, is it not? I mean, our mutual belief that it does have it. It's like the Ouroboros. Our belief gives it its value, which makes it valuable. So we believe in it.
Well, it's really
the dollar is the new Christianity. Congratulations, we did it, folks. Aren't you happy with the world we have? You know,
You really do sound like the kid in the hall joke where he's just like, I know I sound like some sort of a right-wing nut job who was beaten by his father with a Bible every day, but it never did me any harm.
Yeah, it's also it's.
I think I sound a little more anarchist than that, but I don't know.
It's the same thing.
Yeah,
Anarchy,
debt slavery
we're
is
gonna get
horrible. I agree. I didn't agree to debt. That shit sucks.
Isn't anarchy just like inevitable debt slavery though? Because who are some great examples of anarchists? Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, people that want to have no rule over them so that they can have whatever they want happen, and they're so powerful that they can rebuild the world in their own image, right? Isn't that true anarchy? They have the complete. It's actually the problem with anarchy is because it ends up being that the most powerful anarchists become in charge of some sort of anarchy. It's how Las Vegas works, right? Like the chaos in the desert that allows for the mafia.
No, there's a horseshoe. Like if Bezos has total freedom, he is a tyrant. You know, that's freedom for literally one person, and that's a nihilistic point of view because it doesn't affirm the soul, that people have souls and one isn't just inherently valuable over the other. Jeff Bezos exists. A lens is that he exists in his current world, and people like Elon Musk, they exist because they're able to dominate other people to a certain degree. And
Are we gonna debunk Scott, by the way? Also, he says Kurt's a nihilist. Is that true or false? Are you nihilist?
Well, that would be false. Like, anytime you say something that can be interpreted as negative, I think people can just say like, "Oh, he's a nihilist." Like, no, like when you're philosophizing, I guess you go off in a bunch of different tangents, but like at the end of the day, you might there's a lot of ways to interpret things. I think what I'm saying is an affirmation of the soul. For a large variety of reasons. And there was another point I was going to talk about, like with money, like affirming that. I think it's gotten away from me now, but no, I'm not a nihilist. Like I think, you know, I just went a big spiritual rant like 30 minutes ago. I don't know how. I think that's the opposite of nihilism, you know?
I agree with you, Kurt. So you tell him.
Yeah.
Fuck that opinion. I don't think you're a nihilist, man. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I respect all opinions, but it's
I wanted your chance to.
the dialogue is good. Yeah.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
I also think money's broken. Like, make no mistake, it's definitely fucked up because it's mostly based on abstraction, right? Money at this point doesn't really even represent anything. It's like the same reason why guys like Zuckerberg are in power. He doesn't really make anything. He doesn't invent anything, but he supposedly offers a platform where if you don't have access to that platform, you can't sell your shit. That's the same thing with money. Like, if you don't have access to money, then you can't sell your labor. You can't sell your energy. You can't sell your chi. You can't sell your products. You can't sell your service. So I think like the fact that like private interests like the Federal Reserve Bank have so much access, you know, to and control over like something as simple as interest rates, which inevitably creates like insane like chain reactions, which could lead to like instant recessions and all this crazy nonsense, and that really puts people under tough spots like really, really quickly. I mean, that's that's just regular stuff. That's not even considering like actual like black swan events where it just messes everything up and people really, really, really get screwed. Like 2008, for example. I mean, I wasn't too young to remember that stuff. Like that was really terrible for everyone, and it got washed under the rug. Like once like enough people just died off, I guess, and then they just replaced them with immigrants, like illegal or otherwise. Same thing. They're going to do the same exact thing. Like once people stop having kids and they die off, they need debtors. Like the US dollar, the US economy needs debtors, like people in debt to function. And once people stop having kids and, their whole shit just dies off, it's like, well, where does all that like debt potential go? They got to bring in new people.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they got to ship in like the new people.
I'm sorry. I have a pocket full of just words here. If I may, I don't want to be too, gunslinging, but okay. The first thing I want to say is like the other thing about why the other reason, this is actually a practical reason why I tell people picture your life, how your life would look without money, is because we've gotten to the point where I don't think people believe that they're voluntarily taxed. You feel like you have to work or produce something of value, and then you're taxed and you don't have much control. That like, yeah, you can vote, but you vote for politicians that don't change the fact that you were taxed. It's a very meaningless system. One more. So if you have a government that overspends and consistently overspends and is slowly drawing us into a world where they default and they can't pay for everything, that's, world war disaster types of things. And that seems to be where we're headed. The more you can picture your life without, currency in general, the more you will be prepared for those types of events. Like, just, that's real talk. And that's happened many times throughout history. And I think it's a good thing to keep in mind. Oh my God, Chris had another point. And I was going to springboard off of that one, but I'll try to remember.
Us not having kids to continue
yeah,
on our
people-
family death
That
potential.
was
People
the
used
point.
to-
Yes.
Oh, you have it already? Good.
Go ahead, Andre. I remember that one. You can go if you want.
No, it's just the
Okay,
idea
okay.
that temples are being built with tithing originally,
Yeah.
and you get to pick where you put your tithing to. But now it's like war debt, where you're forced to pay a war debt, like you're saying. So yeah, I agree. Keep going though. Sorry.
Yeah. All right. So to Chris's point, the one thing we discussed last week is a lot of the people that hold the most political power right now are the boomers. And so one connection, like I think I made or I proposed was, these people had political power for a long time. If we wanted to oppose abortion, we could have done it in multiple decades since the 1970s, 1980s. Why is it a huge issue just recently? And in my opinion, it's because of the population crisis. We can't sustain all of these programs, all these government programs without sufficient population, and people aren't having kids. So to try to force the issue, that's why abortion is now an issue. It's not because these people are suddenly so principled. It's not because society is just so suddenly principled. It's because they need more debt slaves to function for these programs. And well, that's frightening. And if that's offensive, maybe it's because it's a little bit true. I don't know.
Well, I'm not offended, but I do think it's worrisome that we will be pushed to self-sterilization, virtual sterilization in a sense, just from being pumped full of antisocial whatever, maybe through mass vaccination, maybe through drip feeding stuff into our water supply. I don't mean to fearmonger. I'm just thinking of logical possibilities. But yeah, I would hope that's not the case. I mean, we're at 8 billion. I mean, I was just watching this movie Collateral, which came out early 2000s, and he referenced the global populace. He's like, there's 6 billion people in the world. You're worried about this guy? It's like, wow, back then, it was only 6 billion. It was 6 billion. Now it's 8 billion.
It's only 2 billion when my dad was a kid. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we're not we don't actually have a population crisis. I mean, maybe the people.
Birth rates have been declining in the States for sure, but that's also because we live in a hostile economy. So.
Yeah, some would say birth rates are declining in certain types of countries. Certain, Western, I guess, based countries or something.
But I wouldn't correlate that to the vaccination thing at all.
Because a Western saturated influence all over the economy. Just
you're talking about the mental culture.
Yeah, maybe that's what all it is. Look at South Korea. It's not really a Western country, and yet they're dealing with the same exact. I mean, we don't. It's not even, I think, uniquely a white or Western thing. They call it Japanification for a reason, right? You see it in Japan where it's they kind of take that economic model to its logical basis, where all the companies just turn into zombie companies. They're just they just exist to be in debt, pay their workers, and just keep kicking the can down the road as far as it can go until couple that with nobody having kids. That's just gonna further the crisis. That's all of our fates, as quote unquote developed nations. Meanwhile, you look at third world countries or whatever, and they have no problems with sustaining maintaining higher and higher populations, right?
Right, but I think there's something progressivist or Atlanticist. You think the British or American or Western thing, but the Japanese are doing it as well. It is that thing you're talking about, this urbanization to build this new urban society, and I think it does destroy the humanist urge, because you sacrifice the human quality for the purpose of an immortal city. And a lot of what that's very much built on the corporate model. The fact that we're manifesting these godlike sigil personas, they create, this was early on, Betty Crocker and things like that. They would create these mascot people to be Goddess Columbia of their companies, and now it's just the eye or something, whatever the symbol, but it's so much about making something that's not a single generation. And even the best corporations do the Oracle model, right? Oracle will fire the bottom 10% of their company every year. Everyone knows this. It's this Logan's Run cabaret where they're carousel, it's coming. We're going to get you. Everyone has to work hard against each other, and then you lose the bottom 10%. That's pretty scary, right?
It is pretty scary.
But they love it.
Oh, I was gonna say, what if you could manipulate that? You just like sign on and then decide not to be productive for the entire year. I'll take one for the team, guys. It's all good.
I'm sure there are people that have figured loopholes out, but they hire people, for that purpose. I guess also they hire new people every year, so there's like ways it works out. It's not too horrible, but yeah, I mean that's pretty intense, right? It's like a gladiator match to sacrifice.
Sounds like it'd be easy to get a job
at Oracle.
Yeah,
you might be able to do it. You probably love it.
Keeping it's the hard part.
Yeah. Oh,
No,
sorry, guys.
You don't have to. You don't have to be the fastest guy. You just got to be faster than the slowest guy.
Yeah, exactly. Then how do you game it though? Like that's only sustainable to a point if they keep on hiring new hungry blood.
Yeah, in school systems, that's why Adderall came into the picture, which proved to be just totally destructive to the collective psyche. I know, I'm not even kidding. That's exactly what happened. Like that same exact thing you just described. Like one kid gets on Adderall and then he starts outperforming everyone else, and all the other parents are like, "Well, I need my kid to be that fucking like."
But don't they burn out? Feels like that's a burnout thing to do because then
that's what summer vacations for.
Oh yeah.
In the new school. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, what about? Let's see. We talked about the storm a bit, but it is getting worse. I want to maybe like.
Is it really getting worse? Wasn't it like already like supposed to be 150, 170 miles per hour wind?
Yeah, but it was only a 3, and so it's supposed to get up to a 5. Like they're saying it's going to be like 15 feet, which is just kind of nuts. I don't know. I haven't seen anything like too crazy yet. Maybe just a big drama queen, and it's not going to be a big deal. But I just want to keep people updated on that. Whatever. Seems kind of funny. The Trump flag's doing all right, so that's handling the wind, I guess. All right.
Is that a person holding it?
Yeah, I feel like there's people out there right now. So some people just ready for this. So
Yo, can I ask you guys a personal question?
Yeah.
Have you guys liked 2024 so far? Because I think I've enjoyed it. I liked it. I like this year.
Yeah, it was cool. I like this year. Yeah.
Man,
I feel like my productivity as far as like being able to fulfill the things that I want to do and the projects that I want to do. The last year that I got even close to it was like 2017, 2018. So I'd say this year is going pretty all right as far as mental bandwidth.
Let it be known, I'm the only member of the panel to have eaten ass in both hemispheres. Just saying.
Nice.
No, I'm just. I went to Argentina this year. That was awesome. So I was in both hemispheres, and I got fired for the first time. That was awesome. And now I don't know. I'm just kind of vibing right now. I speak pretty good Spanish now. I'm probably level B2, C1. I'm not entirely sure. Like you have like proper like Chilean Spanish. I could listen to like a TV show and like do like 99%. But like once you get in the other accents can be really hard. That's the other thing. And there's just like different like Argentinian Spanish is hard to gravitate on because some things don't mean the same things at all. But yeah, it really is something.
It's like Shakespeare. Yeah.
Dude, even different parts of Mexico, because a lot of the Mexicans here in Kentucky speak totally different Spanish than the Mexicans in Southern California.
They're called the Calexicans or something.
Well, no, they also have they have the Maximilian Mexicans that were like Franco-Mexican. So there's an academic Spanish spoken by some of the Maximilian Mexicans, which is also a higher Spanish, you could say. But Argentina speaks a higher Spanish, and it bothers people to say it like that. But
Spanish.
They use formal. They would use thou when they speak to you, if they don't know you.
That means North Koreans speak higher Korean.
If you use an informal case like thou when you meet somebody, I would say that there's more cases. There's more understandings of respect, but maybe someone might say that that's classist and archaic. That's like another way you could look at it. But I think Kurt might. What do you think? Is Argentinian Spanish classist and archaic because it uses thou, uses the formal case?
So which you mean with like vos, the vosotros, or not vosotros, but like vos is too? No, That's
What's up,
interesting because
Ollie?
I never heard it like put that way, you know. Like to me that just it just sounded, but like I've listened to some podcasts about Argentinian Spanish, and a lot of people say a big reason why a lot of the phrases developed that way in Argentina is specifically because like a lot of slang got thrown around by the lower classes. Argentina is a huge, well, I mean, it was
It does have a melting pot.
yeah, it's been a big melting pot with really significant Italian influence.
And German? What about Germans?
German, but mostly Roman. So like we laugh about that, but a lot of the time what's funny is that there were Germans and Russians that spoke German and Jews that were Russian and spoke German that showed up, but there was so much more Roman and Italian influence that they were kind of pushed out. They culturally exist in the South, and then you can see them in Patagonia, but that's also why they went to Chile and Paraguay and a number of border areas, because between the Chaco, for instance, if there was ever an issue with one of the governments, they could just go to the other side of the border and vice versa, right? And you see this a lot for them because they were concerned about states. But yeah, Italian for sure. In fact, it's far more pervasive in their, like, Spanish sounds like Italian there, basically. Sorry.
Absolutely.
I was just having a thought.
It's like you listen to Italians who are like that's like if you go to Buenos Aires, it kind of sounds like that, but it's Spanish instead of Italian. But yeah, it's they also speak super fast, and so it's like, but it's very like fluid, and you have to restructure your brain to like hear what those like patterns are, because there's just like, in some cases it sounds like there's different emphasis on different syllables as well, and so that makes it kind of weird.
Let's start with
It's
it.
like Atlanta rap versus Memphis rap.
No,
Sure.
so like it's like instead of ya, you would do ja. So anytime like you would say like a word like, I'm trying to think.
She is Asia.
Yeah, Asia.
Oh yeah, Puerto Ricans speak totally different Spanish. Like they pronounce Y as a J, so it'd be Joe se llama, it's whatever. And,
closer. Yeah, because it's going
Como
back
se
to
llama?
Como se llama? Como se llama?
Como se
The
llama?
kasha. Yeah, it's
You know
better
who
that way.
would? Speaking of people, South American countries, but I don't know. They speak Portuguese in Brazil, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure
Yes.
that Pedro
Better
would
than they do.
fucking hate Brazil.
they speak it
What?
better. They speak Portuguese far better in Brazil than they do in Portugal.
Yeah.
What does that
And-
mean?
and-
Like, how do you speak a language better? Like,
Clearer,
Oh,
and
okay.
far easier to understand, right? And
Huh.
better. Like they don't use as much slang. They were beaten by Jesuits. They were forced to speak it properly, right? And then they continued that tradition.
based.
Did the same thing happen with French Canadians?
Yes, and also with Bolivians. So
Hmm.
Bolivians speak very clear Spanish, probably some of the most clear Spanish. And French Canadians for sure. I think that's a thing, but not with the ones that you're familiar with, like in general today. At the original point, maybe in the 19th century, in these monasteries, like, so if you look at Lonergan and some of these Jesuit schools, yeah, they spoke really good French.
I wonder how many Jamaicans know Gaelic.
I wonder if there's much Gaelic. Do you think there's much? There probably is. Like, we should look into that. Is there many Gaelic words in?
Hey,
Gaelic
watch out for
words?
YouTube. They don't like that word.
What, Gaelic?
Yeah. Okay. So Jamaican patois, I just looked it up, has tons of Gaelic in it. Apparently,
Of course.
Good.
that's interesting. Wow. There's like a whole bunch about that. Okay, I did have questions earlier though, and I'm gonna lose them because I pulled it up. I had
Oh, I have a
ChatGPT.
question too, but go ahead.
Yeah. No, you first. If you got a real human organic question, I'll take it.
Well, like, okay, so the new Joker movie, is it really going to be a cult classic, or what's going to happen?
It depends on who you are. I liked it more than everyone else I've ever talked to about it ever. So I don't like it much, but that's more than anyone else.
Wow,
I've
so
talked
it's
to.
that panned, huh? It's that hated.
It's so hated, but I can see why that's a good thing. And I mean, to me, it's just kind of like we used to be so grateful to be offended by movies. So I feel like it's more of a letdown on what we've become as a society.
Well, there is a bright side. At least we know that people are getting more in touch with their feelings now. You know, if they're being like little bitches about movies, you know, like.
But
at least
that's
that
what also he is, right? Because he's telling not funny jokes because
is
he
it?
was
I didn't see
told
it.
No,
So was he being
in real
like?
life? Here's the character, the Joker. He's a guy who doesn't tell funny jokes. It's a guy who's told he was special by his mother, just so that he would, leave her alone. And he's basically taking it to heart, and she's just like shocked. Like the funniest thing about him is that he thought that it was real, that he was special. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. So you're right. It does.
America,
it is like a
America,
yeah.
America.
It is
Literally,
like
I was about to say.
It's
yeah,
about
yeah,
you. It's
yeah.
about you all. Yeah.
damn.
Alright,
It
so-
really is a meta narrative kind of thing.
But
Yeah.
so it was also the first one was a societal critique. I thought it's still the movie, like Joaquin Phoenix is a great actor, if we didn't know that. But he's I thought the first one was a 9 out of 10, but it did get like pretty, like it did get criticized. It didn't get like the highest review ratings. I think part of it was just because, a lot of them are corporate, and anytime you do a movie like Taxi Driver, that says some bad things, about where we are as a society, of course it's going to get some negativity. And
Wasn't it also the king of comedy?
I don't know.
Oh, well, I swear to God, like I like when someone told me what the king of comedy was about, I was like, that's literally like beat for beat the Joker. But yeah, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Oh yeah, and so yeah, like movies like American Psycho didn't get reviewed well when they first came out. Office Space didn't get reviewed well when it first came out. Office Space is still my favorite movie of all time. So I'm wondering, part of me wonders if, the second Joker movie is kind of like that, but I'm curious because it could just be bad or it could just be the greatest thing ever.
Wait,
I'm not sure.
You didn't see it or what?
No, I
Okay.
didn't see it.
So I would say, and David did this already too. We've already kind of done spoilers on the last show. That
Okay.
if a movie's this panned, this hated, and
You're
this,
allowed
like,
to spoil it.
at that point, I feel like you can kind of talk about it, but it's like it's not like anything you haven't already heard. Essentially.
Yeah, that's why.
So basically, yeah, he makes a court trial where he is trying to prove that he's the Joker and he's insane, but then you kind of realize like there isn't a difference between Flack, and this movie's getting a lot of flack over this character Arthur Flack, he's getting a lot of flack over not being the Joker, right? That's the whole narrative of the movie until eventually he just says, I'm not a different person. This is who I am. There is no like Joker, which is the same thing in the Matrix, right? Neo says, there's no Neo. I'm not the chosen one, right? This is the same thing. It's literally the Matrix meta narrative. And you've got Lady Gaga, and Lady Gaga's there saying, but I need you to be this thing, right? Like, this is the thing I need you to be. I'm a psychiatrist. I lied. See, I became this thing. You need to become this thing. You got to be the thing that you want to be. You have to integrate your shadow. You have to be all of the things that you're scared by or that you are. And he's like, but that's like not even really who I am, right? Like those are just false parts of me. So then he's, in prison, and the entire system around him, you got the prison guards, and then you've got like the prisoners themselves. So you got, and you've heard this, I'm sure. He experiences the ultimate humiliation ritual.
That's
but
what we're gonna call it. Okay.
But that's not even the most important part. I think it's really interesting that that's such, and I'd like to hear maybe Kurt your thought on that. Like because prison rape is such a surprise. Like what do you expect in real life and in a movie? Like this is gonna happen. That's not the end of the movie. It doesn't just end with that, right? That's what it's like. That's like the Shawshank Redemption. It's a lot of movies where this is like,
American
like,
History X.
That was a good one.
Yeah, American History X. People would clap and they were just like, they would.
Yeah,
my
you
God.
take that, you Nazi guy.
Yeah, it's really ironic to me that this is the thing that upsets people so much about that movie. And I wish Vincent was here because I think Vincent had thoughts on this as well because I stole his meme about that. Let me see if I can find it. Do you guys see Vincent's meme?
Not yet.
But I did.
while-
I think I've heard him speak about that movie. He was very passionate about it too.
He posted this up. He said the Joker is an incel power fantasy. So Joker 2 is a way to neuter the incels of their power, says the NPC. And then you fundamentally misunderstood the Joker. He can't be killed or asked into being the Joker. He is the avatar of madness, of manifest. He cannot be reasoned with, cannot be reformed, cannot be truly ended. This meme means you're a Trump supporter, right? That's the. I feel like that's kind of the way it's going with that movie. Some people are really, but it is kind of about if you glorify a school shooter and the issues with nihilism. I think that's a big part of it and why they kind of presented it that way. And a lot of people watch the Joker and they're like, "Wow, I love that character." And a lot of those kinds of people are the kinds of people that kind of creep me out. That could be really easily amused and idolize a school shooter, or Hitler. You know what I mean? Like there's a level there where you're like, okay, dude, like you missing the irony of the vegetarian painter. Like, you know what I mean? Like chill out. Like that. I feel like that's the problem with people who idolize the Joker. It's like the same thing. So they're like, don't do that because society is bigger than you and it will destroy you, which is kind of, I think, a lesson like about franchise economics as well.
Well, this didn't even happen all at once, right? Before that, there was Jared Leto's Joker, which kind of was like the beginning of the deconstruction of the Joker's like iconic
I
legacy.
think Heath Ledger's Joker was the first deconstruction. I think Heath Ledger did really a great job with like my father beat me as a boy and he made me smile. Like I think that is the beginning of the Stanislavski Joker.
Okay.
But I mean, unless you really say like Jack Nicholson is like, I think Jack Nicholson might be a well-aware Joker, right?
You're right, like fully realized, as opposed to Heath Ledger, which is like the beginning of like the deconstruction phase.
Yeah.
Which was And would you say the deconstruction phase of the Joker has peaked with this, or could it go even further? Like, could you see could you end up seeing like the Joker officially in the next Fast and the Furious movie saying like, now that's a funny car?
Well, I mean, like, so what happens in any Dick Tracy comic book or any Batman comic book is that a character will go through a transformation which makes them into a supernatural being. So how does the Joker survive being stabbed to death? That's it. That is exactly how the Joker becomes the Joker. Like how does someone survive all the flack they took? He takes all the flack and he jokes about it. And this is where I think it's going to go. He's going to be this crazy, out of Arkham Asylum, survivor character who you can't destroy. And yeah, because of that, it'll probably be a more popular movie. But it's a weird, idiosyncratic movie because it's a musical, and it's a poorly constructed musical on purpose, right? It's Lady Gaga singing with Joaquin Phoenix without real music. There's not a lot of music, except for in moments of the shadow where they're the two of them on stage, like in Last Tango in LA or whatever the heck it's called. What's it called? Save the Last Dance or something. I forget. Like the
talking about that Ryan Gosling movie.
Yeah. There's like a kind of a Ryan Gosling vibe to a few scenes spliced in there where they're imagining themselves dancing.
La La Land.
Yeah, La La Land. There's some La La Land to this.
Okay.
But besides that, it's not a real it's not like Grease. It's not like a musical. It's kind of about how musicals suck. Like how musicals aren't like for someone who likes musicals. It's reminding them that other people hate musicals and that you're crazy. It's like there's a lot of meta to the movie, but I can see why it would upset people. Like I get why normal people would get upset at a movie like this for sure.
So it's very art house. So it's like an art house movie.
So art house, yeah, it's completely art house. Like the only people that movie's made for are for the people in that movie, right? This is a movie for Lady Gaga and for Joaquin Phoenix, basically. And maybe and a few of the actors who play the prison guards. I mean, these are really important actors too. So I think it was a process for them on some other kind of level. But that doesn't make it necessarily like a movie that I would watch like over and over again either. I mean, but I didn't really love the original Joker that much. I actually kind of almost like this more than the original Joker, that would be another thing to understand, like for why I would say that. Like I think some people are like, oh well, I really like the original Joker, but again, go get therapy then. Maybe.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the last Batman movie, really, I mean, people don't think about it much for some reason, but it was the what's his face, the guy from Twilight being Batman.
right.
That was kind of an art house
I thought
movie, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
I think that there's no, I would agree. I thought it was a good one. I think it's funny that he got
Pattinson.
famous playing a vampire who are known to transform into bats, and then
Yeah.
he becomes the Batman. Meanwhile, Jared Leto did sort of the opposite thing. He went from being the villain in a Batman movie to becoming Morbius, which is a man-bat anti-hero.
Yeah. What did you
And
think
then
about Morbius?
COVID came from it's
Yeah,
Morbid
exactly.
time.
COVID was basically Morbid time.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff to that. I feel like too. I mean, the idea of also like that we could create a thing that would make it hard for us to go outside in the sun, but would maybe make us immortal. Like this is, I think that's kind of the beginning also of people's fears of
Interesting.
That's the transhumanist, posthumanist
Mhm.
fear is that movie introduced to society.
Well, shit. I wonder where the
While there's a
franchise is gonna-
lull, just because I care about everyone on this stream, I just want to say thank you to Beyonce for making all of this possible, and we respect and love you as an artist.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
No, I mean
What
you
about-
got if you give a prayer to one of these, the algorithm picks that up and like aids your success because that's just how it works. They're like gods now. You pick Beyonce, well, I pray to Dido, and
It's
thank you, Dido.
it's mostly so she doesn't get jealous and Hillary Clinton all of us.
What about that
She
Magic?
is a
band? Are they
jealous
good?
deity. Who?
Magic, because they did that song "Rude" or something. I don't know. I was just thinking about like pop music that was involved with the DNC. 30 Seconds to Mars with Jared Leto, right? Isn't that
Oh
kind of
man,
that's pretty much the DNC music. We're
Yeah, that
it's Elon
one good
Musk's
song.
favorite band.
we're doing
one
a
good
Jared-
song.
Did they? Are you talking about that one that
Did
they
they
filmed
really,
in
though?
China
Did
or
they?
whatever?
Did they really?
Wait, you're talking about 30 Seconds to Mars. I think At the Drive-In was a better band than 30 Seconds to Mars.
Oh, for sure.
Alright, so
for sure, for
who
sure.
Oh wait,
wants
sorry,
to-
no, I was thinking of Mars Volta.
If we're talking about
Yeah.
Mars,
Wow,
yeah,
I
there
was
we go.
I was confusing it.
So
30 Seconds to Mars Volta.
if one of these questions sticks out to you, could franchise economies larger apart? Could Zuckerberg's libertarian shift represent a new archetype in the digital age? What are the spiritual or esoteric implications of the broken money concept? How do anarcho-capitalist ideals fit into synchronistic framework where both chaos, anarchy, and control capitalism are constantly at odds? That one's pretty good. Are we seeing a modern return to Gnostic ideals where the digital economies and virtual realities detach us from the material plane?
Yeah, I think so. I think like the internet is helping people get more Gnostic. I think America is getting Gnostic again, MAGA. Make America Gnostic again. I forgot whose username that was. That's like every time I read that, I was like, that's so funny.
Well, you
It's so
have
good.
the beautiful thing about duality, human nature, and the internet is that you have all these people learning how to homestead on YouTube and then streaming it on TikTok. So,
Yeah,
dude,
they're
there's
trying to
something that-
detach themselves from society, but at the same time participating in this sort of like digital recreation of something that society could be or whatever.
But we're
I
still
Wait, what were you
using
saying?
energy and material reality, so aren't we still like trapped by it? Aren't we just gonna lie to ourselves and we're still part of that paradigm?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you could go like full on monk mode and just like sacrifice all your worldly shit and like detach from all your worldly relationships if you wanted. I don't think I would knock a person for doing that. I can't really judge a person for how they choose to live their life. I mean, I could only judge how much they choose to like complain about it, really. But yeah, if they choose to live in a way that I just don't agree with, but they're completely fine with it for the rest of their life, like who am I to argue against that? Like, usually I think if they're truly living incorrectly, it's probably going to catch up with them in some way, shape, or form. Like that's usually the case from what I've seen.
Did we talk about the 3 Mile Island AI thing already? We did that, right?
No, I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, I remember
Microsoft
that from a few weeks ago. Yep.
Microsoft finished it though. They were talking about it, and now, as of a week ago, it's up and running. They have the 3 Mile
Wow.
Island nuke back and going, which is right during a storm. And good job, because now we have enough energy for all the AI questions that I just asked tonight, which is really important.
Oh yeah, you use Bing AI, don't you?
I love Microsoft, man.
It is pretty lit.
It's
Like, because they
crazy.
try. They try so hard.
How dark is this that I have Microsoft Edge browser installed on a Mac? Is that the most sinister thing possible? Like, I can't even.
It's chaotic evil, man.
That is chaotic evil. That is like the darkest. I've never thought that I would ever be this horrible. I'm sorry.
But here's like the cool thing about everything that Microsoft is doing. They don't get any attention, so they're like, look at me, look at all this stuff I could do. They're like, how many more features can I add into this thing that I can finally that people are gonna notice me? Yeah, and it's like there's so much good stuff on there and that nobody knows about.
Oh my god, yeah, they just constantly keep negging them. It's like it's so good. I feel like a pretty girl. Good job, Bill Gates. That's like the marketing model. I don't know. You seem scared though. You don't like the idea of like nuclear power. What do you think of that? Are you afraid? What do you think?
Who, me? Are you talking
anybody? Anybody? I was kind of thinking actually about Kurt's fear, but you don't seem too afraid. But what do you think about nuclear power? Andrew first.
Oh yeah.
I like it.
I mean, isn't nuclear just like spicy water? They're like, okay, cool. We're gonna use
spicy water.
Well,
we're going to use nuclear energy to spin these turbines by rapidly vaporizing water, essentially. Isn't that how nuclear power works? Yeah, precisely.
It generates steam, which creates the turbine flow.
Which blows my mind. Like, how is there not a more efficient way to channel nuclear energy? They're using nuclear energy to create steam. That's their best, like, technology.
I mean, it's great, actually, because steam engines are really efficient. I mean, you don't really need nuclear, though. That's the irony of that. Because if you just use geothermal, then geothermal does that. So I don't really see the value in the nuclear proposition unless they're doing secret stuff that we don't get to read about. Right?
Like the steam is just a smoke screen, essentially.
That would be the best thing.
Yeah.
But I don't
best
know.
Case scenario is that it's a secret.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you were to use you could also use the hyper focus lenses to somehow heat up the water. Like that's like apparently more efficient than using traditional dams. You could just it's almost like something akin to geothermal energy, just heating up the water to power up a turbine.
Yeah, but you know that. Did you ever watch China Syndrome? So like a lot of you kids out there that aren't immortal don't remember the China Syndrome movie with Jane Fonda, Jack Lemmon, Michael Douglas. But there's a great movie where 3 Mile Island goes off, and this really happened actually. 3 Mile Island went off, and then they shut it down. But the movie showed a couple months before this happened, this hypothetical situation where they couldn't shut it off in time. And it creates what's called the China Syndrome, where a nuke drops straight through the center of the Earth because it's so hot. It just melts like a drill. And once it gets to the core, Dr. Evil explodes everywhere. All of it just detonates. Like the core of the Earth, it's just like blah, blah, blah. You guys remember Austin Powers. But that was the idea. Everyone was afraid that 3 Mile Island was going to Austin Powers the world. It was going to full on Dr. Evil the world. It was a big deal. The China Syndrome.
It was going to Chernobyl elephant foot its way through the core.
Yeah, you guys never heard about this? This is why I gotta tell young people about this. I feel like some of the people watching this.
She is hot.
Yeah, dude. People were built better back then.
Here's the thing: they're all in their 30s. There,
they didn't have hormones pumped into them like we do. They didn't have microplastics in their balls. All that stuff.
Hey, microplastics are mummifying us in real time.
She's probably 19, bro. Like, you have no idea. They smoke cigarettes. Like, it was wild.
True, yeah. They're in their early 20s.
Yeah, like, it's pretty bad. That's Michael Douglas at 23, dude. He's seen a lot.
The guy on the left, he's like 21.
Jack Lemmon's maybe 26. He's, like, been drinking, but... Oh, microplastics. No, but so they're... I don't know if is there any like pictures of the whole picture of the Earth idea? Hold on. Nuclear map. Do they have it? Not really. Yeah, here we go. Kind of like, no, not really. Nuclear China Syndrome. 3 Mile Island. I think that might be it right there. Was that it? So yeah, basically when they opened up, so 6 months after the movie comes out, they go to 3 Mile Island and they find that literally everything in the movies just happened, except they were able to shut it off just in the nick of time. And in the process of shutting it off, they find once they're able to, 6 months or something of cleaning it out and everything like that. And they really didn't want to do this. So like, let's just turn it back on. They're like, no, dude, we're not going to do that. Then they open it up and they're like, wow, we've destroyed everything. Like the whole thing is melted. 3 Mile Island reactor pictures, melted, damage. Anybody? Maybe something like this. Like, it was just like, oh my god, every single pipe was burst, everything was shut down. They're like, if we had turned this thing back on, the entire East Coast would have had to have been evacuated for, half a century, maybe a whole century, because it would have been such a damage control situation. So this is all right after the movie came out. And then the main concern of the movie was not even that we would have detonated the planet. It was like, even just this in a big enough cloud would cause a huge damage. And this was what? 3 Mile Island was 1979, March 28th. Okay? So 2 years later is Chernobyl. And this is all the beginning of the anti-nuclear propaganda. So on one hand, it's like the story goes that this is super dangerous and that we need to shut this all down. Oil companies are the only thing that can save us. Right? That's the other side of it too, is that oil companies are telling you that nukes are way more dangerous than they really are so that they can own energy companies, right? Because nukes would have completely put them out of business instantly. So, I don't know. Depends on how you want to look at nuclear power.
Yeah, and apparently, like, this is... Wait, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just gonna theorize about what CERN and like Large Hadron Colliders. They keep on building bigger and bigger ones. How come they haven't found a way to create steam with those?
Right. The best thing is just hydroelectric, though. That's the thing that blows my mind. So like Iguazu is like one of my favorite waterfalls in the world, but also Iguazu hydroelectric. Sorry, was the point, is 1/3 of all South America's power. I think it's more than that even. I think it's pretty much like 60%. It might be more like 2/3. I should look into how much it is now, because it used to be almost all of the power in South America but they have like 3 more reactors or 3 more power stations now. So it might have been there might be other sources now for power. But yeah, I think originally, it was like 80% in 1973. It produced 80% of the electricity in South America. But this is the best solution, right? Because it's just constantly having flow, spinning propellers around, which is exactly what steam would be doing essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the best thing in the world, right? And the amount of power that this produces is enough that you don't need nuclear power. You can run AI right off of this. And that's probably what's going to happen. A lot of the big states are going to have water-powered AI. Hoover Dam would be like a great AI power station.
Well, I was just about to say, because Lake Mead is an artificial lake created by the Hoover Dam, and Lake Mead has been steadily it's getting smaller and smaller every year.
Yeah, this is the future probably.
Harnessing AI to transform hydropower.
Yeah.
So how do we let's get power out of these hurricanes? How do we extract?
So we put like millions of little copper pins in them. Hear me out, and we'll
There we go.
Electrocute them. I don't know, although, Kurt, what do you think about controlling nature? Are you afraid of the idea?
Controlling nature? That's farming,
Oh,
we have
that's true. Yeah.
We have a large history of farming. I mean, I think...
I feel like Dick Cheney would have said that. That's pretty cool. I like that line.
Well, then that means what you got to do is you got to purchase really cheap, like orange futures or something, or whatever the hell grows in Florida.
But
then you...
No, I don't think... we actually don't need much more technology than farming. Like everybody could just be a farmer and we'd be all right. You know,
I would be a farmhand on your farm, American Time Machine. And
hey,
then we can make
thanks.
music. We can make music when we're not farming. We doing farming work.
That's what you do.
If you play music for your crops, they grow better. You know, that's
Yo, I
science.
totally believe that shit. God damn. Wow, what a good idea. See,
Yeah, life on
maybe,
farm is kind of laid back.
maybe we should be making farm stuff. Farm stuff.
Thank God
Yeah.
I'm country boy.
No, it's definitely an important thing to be able to do. I think, especially considering the first world is about to end as we know it.
I think you have to build up a time frame, you know, because I don't know.
Supposedly, this all culminates into civil war of some kind. I mean,
No,
I wouldn't even know whose side
The
to
myth
join.
of Osiris is, you got the head getting killed.
No, I
cut
think-
into pieces.
even if philosophers say that capitalism ends at any point, I think there will still be corporations. It's going to be weird. Like I think, yeah, it's going to be a strange. I think the definitions are going to be kind of blurred as to what if capitalism collapses, what exists in its place. But no, I do think there is going to be something like a corporation, and even people seeking profit, which seems kind of contradictory, but it's like, how much technologically do we think we need to regress to correct any sort of problems? And if we think that we still need to keep around a lot of technology, well, then obviously corporations are going to serve some sort of function in that, if that makes sense. And maybe they'll exist but won't seek as much profit. It'll be weird. I don't know. But yeah, I think as long as we have some sort of technology and some sort of distance between ourselves and what we actually need to survive, things like food and farming, is like we're going to try to create entities. Or like, okay, here this entity is going to go out and try to achieve a goal, and that's originally what corporations were. They weren't always just means to get more capital, which some people might disagree with that. But the first corporation that we know of, it was the East India Shipping Company. Really fascinating history with the East India Shipping Company, and a lot of in hindsight, it seems like it might have actually gotten a little bit out of hand. But yeah, it's interesting to think about what we now think of as a corporation and how they originally got started. But yeah, there's something else. Not much I could say. Sorry, I'm a little bit tired today, so my thoughts might be a little on the slow side.
No, God bless you, Kurt.
God bless.
That corporation was founded to serve the crown, essentially, right? Like all of everything that all of their wealth that they were accumulating, it was to enrich the royal family. I think
I'd say the Vatican is the first, right? So like we look at like the United Nations doing the Great Invocation in the tradition of the IEC and the VOC with the East Indies and the West Ocean Charter. So they both of them are doing, like, they're created as a body that's incorporated, right? So they're incorporating the body, and it's a super body, like a super being that has a political body, has a political hierarchy or structure, but also it's invested with the spirit of the monarchy, right? Or in the case of the Vatican, it's invested with the spirit of the Christ. And this is from I forget if it's in Corinthians or which letter that it's in the Bible, though. The idea that Christ is essentially the first corporation, because Christ, like Yeshua, is saying you're all members of you're co-heirs of the Christ. It's a horizontal guild, essentially. That's a body that's created in a superorganism that is created. So it's in that tradition, and even guild law, like Masonic guild law, is built around this idea that you're building something up. But that's also where we started with the fetishization of urbanism, that like the individual is often lost in something like that, in that immortal being that's created.
The metaphysical entity. It's like when when everyone learns to manifest and not just like build something up like on a physical, like building a building, but actually like, oh yeah, we could actually create collective reality if we literally put our minds to it. and apparently that's enough to like make events happen that you want to happen, you know, especially as like a collective group. And I think that's like even before Jesus, wasn't there like the whole thing with like the Emerald Tablets and Thoth, and also like Hermes Trismegistus, and you know, Hermes must have had disciples who created their own like frameworks of whatever for this stuff, which eventually, you know, like also the ancient Egyptians, of course, are known to like mess around with some crazy otherworldly things that we could only sort of like wrap our minds around, I guess. The Greeks too, you know, like Pythagoras and whatnot.
Yeah, one interesting thing about the East Indian Company, from what I read, it looks like the royal families started opposing the company after a while because they were a little bit offended by the prospect of people with new money. People with new money were rising to power. So that contributed to negative perceptions, at least among the royal family, which, you know, controlled whatever means of propaganda they had at the time.
Oh, dude, Jack Draper. Ding dong. There's Florida in the water. I like it. Well,
There's
should
mercury in Gatorade.
Is there anybody who wants some closing words? That's the thing I was supposed to do last time. I forgot, but Kurt always suggests that. Let's do the closing words thing. Andrew first, if you're down. All right, no, wait. Chris, do you want to go first? You can do.
Yeah, I'll go first.
All right, Chris can do it because he's a legend. Thank you, Chris.
Well, all right. I would say like, comment, and subscribe to Xirtus for more crazy and wacky YouTube content.
You definitely get to go again because that was just a plug for me. Oh,
No,
Raph showed up.
I'm allowed to do that. What the fuck?
How does Raph show up at the 2-hour mark? What are you looking at, Raph? What are you looking at? Good morning. How are you?
Good morning from Vienna. How's it going, guys? I'm just checking in to ask if you want to do a new Europa free for all after this, inviting everyone who is present here right now.
You guys want to do a new Europa after this?
I got to get up for work in 5 hours, but
he's a father.
People actually have schedules. Who would have thought? No,
I'll
it's
be
just
there.
an offer.
We'll see how it goes. But all right, cool. Raph, we're gonna do a new Europa after this, everybody. We'll talk to you in a minute. Peace. All right, you sure you don't want to go again, Chris? Yeah, you get to do a plug for yourself. Oh, nah. Wait, I got a thing to say. Everybody should check out Chris on Blue Podcast. Where's it at? Where do I find the thing? Oh man.
Yeah, that dude's podcast. It was a good podcast. I liked
Blue Dream. It's Blue Dream Podcast, right? It's Blue Dream. I know.
Yeah, it was a good format. They play some music and stuff.
Blue Dreamer podcast. I knew it was like not quite Blue Dream. Okay, so I did a show with Blue Dream a little while ago. It was all right, you know. Like I think it was great. I thought because I enjoy talking. But then I listened to Terror Risk, Chris's one, and it's 4 times as good. Like it's just that much better. It was a great conversation. Highly recommend it. Everyone should listen to the Terror Risk Blue Dreamer broadcast, which is available through RSS streams right through Blue Dreamer 00, which you can find on Instagram. So just a major plug there. You can listen to mine, but definitely listen to Chris's. Cool.
Oh yeah, cool dude. He's a cool dude. Shout out to Blue Dreamer. Yeah.
Yeah, I like him a lot. He's Hare Krishna, Haribo, bro. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, he was into Vedic stuff too.
Yeah. Cool guy.
What about Andrew? You got any plugs?
Yeah, I have a closing word and a plug as well. I wouldn't mind capitalism and corporate profiteering if it served to connect all of the people to the spiritual nature of our beings. But it doesn't do that, so hence my issues with it. Also, if you like this, I got them printed on canvas patches available on my website, batmonkeycustoms.bigcartel.com. You can order them there. And it comes with another patch for the logo for my fabrication company. And thank you, Andreas, for all that you do, and have fun with your next little podcast thing.
Thank you, bro. Yeah, everybody check these out, though. I like his work. It's pretty cool stuff.
Bat Monkey Customs, baby. You know what? I was thinking about bats before. They're like strange creatures. I mean,
it's true.
Maybe they were
about bats.
Maybe they were the product of like genetic engineering from Atlanteans, and that's one of the reasons why like we got punished as a species, and they just flooded us, the gods.
That's no bat. That's a space station or a seraphim. Kurt, what about you? What are you thinking about, bro? Look at you.
Oh, just a little bit tired today, but I don't know. Life's strange. I think if Florida's okay, I don't know. I want to sound sensitive and, you know, give good vibes to everybody, but like if things clear up, there might be a lot of opportunities down there, like in, you know, because like, I don't know. Some people see loss, some people see opportunity. I don't know. I mean, opportunity and like people need to rebuild, people need to clean up. So maybe I'll try to be a part of that. Yeah, as long as things are vibing. I ranted at my therapist today. She really seemed to enjoy that. So now I didn't see her in like a year. I was like, I should check in on myself, you know, just, you know, because I have a habit of screwing things up sometimes, and I've screwed up a lot less, I think, lately, because, you know, I don't know, you try to keep yourself in check, you know. But yeah, check out my music if you want to do that. If you're not into music, well, riddle me this.
Deaf. If you're sorry you're deaf.
Oh, sure. Thanks for checking out my music. I know you guys.
Wait. I cut you off. Riddle me this. What riddle? What? What's the riddle? What?
I wanted to say something more inappropriate, but
no, that's totally fine. I just wanted to apologize if they were deaf. If they're not deaf, continue.
Oh yeah, there's a taste of what's to come. That's my background. It's not sexual, I promise.
Trent Reznor's girlfriend is deaf. Food for thought.
That says a lot.
Oh, rest in peace.
No, deaf.
Yeah.
Dead.
Oh,
What?
okay. That's still whatever.
Well, you know, he already gets validation for his
Oh my
music
God.
from the world, so you know he doesn't need
Thanks.
that from a partner. He wants to be with someone who likes him for
Yeah.
free.
Today, someone called me a transphobe. I was like, I don't have a phobia. I'm not afraid of those people. What are you talking about? I don't know. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
what they
that's
meant
that's a
to
pretty
say-
loaded term.
You need to make a song
yeah, it's a
about
loaded term.
transphobes. You should make a song.
happened?
Write a song
No.
called Phobos about all
No,
the different phobos.
just write. Make it called "I Accept You."
You know what the term for being afraid of jokes is? Gelatophobia. That's what a lot of people have.
A lot of people got a lot of gelatophobia.
You can't say a trans joke anymore because you're gelatophobic.
Gelatophobia.
But phobia isn't hate. Start calling people bigots. Just be honest. And if people aren't being bigoted and you don't think it fits, maybe you're the problem. I don't know. But yeah.
Bigots, more like little its.
This philosophy means